Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spider-Man Miles Morales. So we got abducted by our uncle this time. This seems to be happening a lot to Miles lately, getting abducted by random people he happens to tangentially know that are evil.
I like how the Spider-Man eyes in these games are animated so that they have mechanical eyelids. And I have to wonder, like, why would they build their costumes like that?
So that you can better animate, better emote. It's always really weird going back to like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man games where, not games, but movies, where like Peter's eyes just like, it's just like he's wearing a Halloween mask. They don't move. And they end up, and because that's boring as hell to look at, they just end up having him take the mask off anyway.
A lot of the time, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't mind it. Of course, it's kind of silly, but
it kind of just reminds me of like a Sentai at that point.
Yeah.
Like that's why it never really bothered me. Cause like I feel like I'm just back in Power Rangers. I do appreciate though the expressive mask though in future iterations.
I like how he was able to just bust out with his electric powers.
So you have a boss fight with the Prowler.
Fucking, this is your uncle, and he decides, all right, I'm gonna open up with a fucking haymaker. That'll teach him.
Well, I mean, he's
listen, when your nephew's fucking Spider-Man.
I know, but goddamn.
This is for your own good, Miles. Whack.
Better get the metal pipe just in case.
Next with the crowbar.
I like that line, though. I don't get to pick and choose when I'm Spider-Man.
I mean, you sort of do. You can't be in the mask all the time.
Gotta balance work and life. That's what his uncle
Yeah,
told
but it's basically like his version of with great power comes great responsibility, you know?
Yeah.
Miles had a good example in the form of the existing Spider-Man, so he didn't need to lose his Uncle Ben before he figured that part out.
I mean, he did lose his dad, but his dad not being around is kind of a different
but that was
sort of thing.
That was unrelated to him being Spider-Man is the thing.
Yeah, it's more about him knowing what the danger in the world is about. It's kind of nice to have a character who doesn't need to effectively be guilt-tripped into being a superhero.
Well, it's kind of the thing about superheroes is that they are fundamentally aspirational. There's supposed to be a moral core that you can look up to superheroes, even if the superhero themselves is a bit on the edgy or personality flaws side of things. Miles had Spider-Man in his life as a fixture of New York City before he became the second Spider-Man. So he had a good example. He had a sort of a figure to look up to that taught him the lessons that figure learned the hard way. Which is just, you know, what superhero comics are about, really.
It's also just nice to have the second version of a character not just follow the same arc as the original, which is kind of a way that many of these sorts of things tend to fall apart. You know, like, I feel like one of the reasons why Sam Wilson, when they made Sam Wilson the Falcon Captain America in the comics, they didn't really do much with that. So it felt more like, oh, we're doing it as a publicity stunt versus actually trying to do something with the character.
That was a lot of when they changed the heroes to various minorities or women or everything. It's like, look at this thing we're doing.
Yeah,
and
they
then it
did
was
the
just
same thing.
like,
The same thing with Iron Man, didn't it? Wasn't it this girl for a while?
Yeah.
Afterwards too. I don't read Marvel comics, so I'm blanking.
There was a
on
period
names.
for like a year where they were doing that to everyone. It was kind of like, we know what you're doing, Marvel.
Well, I mean, sometimes they are doing something interesting. Like, I think Jane Foster as Thor was actually a really good story.
I was about to bring up Jane Foster as Thor, actually, because that's the only one of those that I actually bothered reading. And it was interesting because she has cancer, right? And the trade-off for using her powers is that her powers, they purge her they purge her body of impurities and stuff, which in her case means it undoes the chemotherapy that's helping with her cancer.
So
she's dying a little bit every time.
So wait, in that case, the cancer in itself is not considered an impure thing because it's part of her.
Well, cancer. So I'm not a doctor, obviously.
Yeah.
But cancer isn't an illness in the same way that like the cold is. It's not a virus or anything in you. It's just natural cells growing out of control. So it's effectively your body going into overdrive about something that doesn't matter. Kind of like allergies. Allergies aren't the body, like the allergies are 100% created by your body freaking out. Peanut butter doesn't make somebody's throat collapse. It's your body misinterpreting peanut butter as a threat that does. So, obviously, you know, science and comic books I've never really seen eye to eye in many different ways, but it does make sense in that if something if the Thor powers made something unnatural leave her body, aka the radiation from chemotherapy, it would leave the cancer, which is natural but harmful, alone. It comes entirely from within her, but it's also bad because it's fucking cancer.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, cancer is fucked up.
Basically, one of the reasons Jane Foster was considered worthy to wield the hammer was because she was willing to make that sacrifice in order to wield the hammer. And it made her a kind of tragic superhero. I won't say all of the Jane Foster Thor stories were good, but the core concept of it was interesting.
I think a lot of it is kind of some of the issues that Thor in general tends to have. Thor's a really kind of weird superhero in that his vibe is not really even that of a superhero. It's more just a high fantasy story, but he lives in a superhero universe. So there's always been kind of a clash in tone for him that I've found many of the comic books have a hard time. A hard time kind of coming clear on. The Hulk also seems to have this issue a lot too, which is why it's generally harder to find Hulk comic stories that resonate with people.
It's interesting because in theory Thor should have the same sort of tonal balance that you would expect from something like Wonder Woman, because they have a very similar sort of concept in that way. But Wonder Woman always managed the superhero aspect better.
I think part of that just comes down to popularity, in that Wonder Woman was always popular on her own merits, whereas Thor was always a C-lister who was just also on the Avengers for a long time. And so then they just kind of, the only time you really saw him in anything popular was the Avengers. And that's why the best Thor stuff to me has been the stuff that has leaned more into him just being his own thing versus it's kind of weird in that Dark World relies on a lot of Thor mythology, but sent in terms of the villain or whatnot, but since most of like the plot and emotional resonance is all coming from other shit.
Hey, bada.
It's kind of why that movie fails, is because instead of learning cool things about Thor's world, it's just like, oh, there's dark elves from some place that Thor knows, and then we're going to spend an entire movie not doing cool Thor stuff, but doing boring ass Earth stuff, which is why it doesn't really work.
Yeah,
because we didn't have the budget to do a whole fantasy world yet.
The popularity of Wonder Woman from the start is a pretty big factor, yeah, because it means that when you got a particularly popular Wonder Woman comic arc, it was because Wonder Woman was already popular, so the creative team that they put on that was a high-profile creator, for one thing, who understood the popularity and importance of what they were working on and put a lot of heart into it as a result.
Yeah, and it also got to exist on its own. Yeah. Versus needing to be, tied into an Iron Man storyline or whatever.
I mean, Wonder Woman is one of the main members of the Justice League, but she doesn't always have to be interacting with the Justice League.
Yeah. It's also, especially with like big fantasy and like high stakes, high power characters like that, it kind of, having them just kind of cross paths doesn't work as well, I find, a lot of the time. like, for example, Spider-Man, I think part of why Spider-Man is so popular is because since he's strong individually, but also a down-to-earth character in a down-to-earth setting, he gets to mix with other characters very easily. It's not like weird for him to run into Luke Cage and have an issue or two where he teams up with Luke Cage or Daredevil. But since he's also fairly strong, if like Iron Man needs help or like the Hulk is rampaging through New York, it's not out of place for him to be there versus like any team up with like Thor and Daredevil just really wouldn't make sense. You know, or like Thor and Iron Fist, although nobody really hangs out with Iron Fist. Poor guy. Yeah, so it's just kind of that sort of thing. I would, if anybody in the comments has thank God. Oh, beautiful video games. I don't care if it takes the immersion out of anything or it's like a breaking the fourth wall. I don't give a shit. Please tell me if I'm going to be missing side quests or missing bonuses if I go through plot door. Please and thank you. This is, oh my God.
Well, you can do everything in post-game, so nothing's saying...
Yeah, but I still appreciate...
No, but I want to do it now.
But yeah. I also appreciate, like, even if it's going to be 10 hours before I get to do side quests again, yeah. I appreciate it when the game lets me know.
No, I was just being clear that it's not like you can't do them. It's just you're going to the end of the game, so you'll have to wait till post-game to do them then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a point of no return, basically. Once you commit to the plot, you're stuck with the plot until it ends.
Yeah. I know that they're fairly, like, a lot of games have these. Not that I particularly minded any games where, you know, like, oh, I'm getting my ass kicked in the final dungeon. I'm going to walk all the way back out and go back to every town and buy some items and do side quests. Like, that never bothered me too much, really, but I'm also a nerd, so, you know.
Okay, here's a question. Since it's snowing and it should logically come up, has any Spider-Man story ever played with the idea that when it's snowing too heavily, Spider-Man would have trouble sticking his webs to things? Or sticking to things in general?
I mean, probably. I'm sure there has to be one, because Spider-Man's been around for, 60 years? He has to have gone to Snowy Land at some point. I can't think of any off the top of my head. The closest thing I can think of is there's an episode of... Not an episode, God, what? There's an issue of Daredevil. I believe it's Matt Fraction's run on Daredevil. No, Mark Waid. Mark Waid's run on Daredevil.
So good Daredevil run.
Yeah, Mark Waid's run on Daredevil is awesome. I don't think Matt Fraction ever did a run on Daredevil, but his run on Hawkeye is A+. You should read that too. But Mark Waid's run on Daredevil, there's an issue where he's on a bus for a blind school, and the bus kind of breaks down and goes off road in the middle of a snowy winter night, and like all the kids are stranded in the middle of the woods in the snow. And I believe that they bring up some of the stuff that the heavy snow kind of fucks with Daredevil's, like, his senses and the way that he sees. It's been years since I've read this issue, so I could be misremembering it. But I remember I like it when they find ways to put superheroes not in their comfort zone and have them work around issues where their powers don't normally do. Like, where their powers wouldn't work as well. I find that much more interesting than the kind of, oh, there's kryptonite, so Superman can't do anything. I'm sure there's been Batman situations where, like, he's been tied up or locked up without his gear, for example, and you have to watch him makeshift his way out of the situation. Like, that's always an interesting change of pace.
One of the best examples of that I can find was actually Mad Love, the story that developed Harley Quinn's origin, where Harley Quinn manages to capture him and has him so thoroughly tied up that he can't escape on his own.
Yeah, like Harley has him dead to rights.
Yeah, and he escapes by talking Harley into calling the Joker so that he'll fuck up her plan. Is
that the one where the Joker like gets pissed off and starts yelling at her?
Oh yeah, that was the one that like really cemented the abusiveness of the relationship. It was a comic before it was an episode, actually.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, it was a comic in the animated series style, but it was originally written as a graphic novel back when they thought they would never be able to actually
get away with it.
Yeah, they thought they wouldn't be able to get away with doing that storyline in the show. So
they added Harley Quinn to the comics fairly quickly then, in that case, because
Mad Love was like a 93, 94 episode.
And when did the
animated series was 92.
Okay, so yeah, that's pretty quickly, because my understanding was that it took 4 or 5 years for Harley Quinn to actually show up in the comics.
Well,
I guess I was mistaken.
This wasn't the comics. This was the comic book tie-in for the animated series, which is a good comic.
Okay.
A good comic series in its own right, but it was in continuity with the animated series. I'm not sure when she got brought into the main comics though.
I want to say late 90s.
Why do I even keep Wikipedia closed? What's the main DC universe called? The Batman Adventures 12. Okay, so Batman Harley Quinn #1 is October 1999, and that's canon.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, late 90s.
Yeah, so it took a while. Probably once they saw like the syndication numbers for the show, and they were like, "Oh, people actually like this character."
Yeah, the Batman animated series is interesting in that it actually managed to codify quite a few things that ended up being normalized in the comics. Mr. Freeze being an actual character, for one thing.
It's also one of those things where it's easy to forget how different information access is nowadays versus even 30 years ago in the 90s. Because nowadays, if there's a breakout character in anything, the developers or writers or whoever, they know immediately that character's popular, and they can change their thing on a dime to incorporate that. Or if they know that people don't like so-and-so, they can do something about that. Yeah. Versus like back then, you just knew that people, like, you knew the ratings for Batman, that they were good. You could read reviews for it, and you probably had like some sort of surveys or whatever that they sent to kids or focus groups or something, but you didn't have like the instant access to what the collective thoughts were on.
Yeah.
So
all I can think about when you say that is the Itchy and Scratchy public service when in The Simpsons. This one kid really likes the man in the Speedo.
They love Itchy, they love Scratchy.
The other thing back then, though, is that DC was very deliberately coordinating their comics with their TV offerings at the time. That's why Superman died in the first place, because the comic book writers were working on a storyline that was supposed to lead Clark Kent and Lois Lane into marrying, right? But then Lois and Clark happened, and that show was supposed to end with the marriage. So DC's editorial were like, hey, if we're going to have them marry, it has to happen when it happens in the show. So they had to put off their plans to have Clark and Lois marry each other in the comics until the show reached its final season. So they were stuck for things to do during the meantime. So someone was like, let's just kill him. Like, they just said that they said it multiple times during particularly frustrating creative meetings, and eventually the team decided to go ahead with the idea of killing off Superman.
It's funny that you bring that up, though, that everything had to like tie together for synergy or whatever, because that actually did happen to Spider-Man. Stan Lee drew a like Spider-Man like comic sketch for the Sunday paper, like where Garfield would be, like Garfield and Boondocks and whatnot. And in that's where Mary Jane and Peter got married first, and then the actual like Marvel Comics were like, well, we can't have them not be married now, and so they rushed together a wedding story for Mary Jane and Peter in the comics canon as well.
I mean, the same thing happened to Batgirl, where she was originally a creation of the 66 show, but they were like, well, we can't have her be in the show, but she's not in the comics, so they rushed together a small story with Batgirl like a month before she appeared in the 66 show. So she technically debuted in the comics first, but she was created for the 66 for the Adam West show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the production time on the show took a lot longer than making the comic, especially if they could rush it like that. Oh, is this where we find out how Miles got bit by a radioactive?
No, that was the first game.
Oh, okay.
We're just having flashbacks to when things were good between him and Finn.
Aww.
They're sneaking into the employee-only section of Oscorp.
No, the science exhibit.
Why the science?
Because they don't have tickets. They don't have tickets to their own exhibit.
What?
Oh, they were interns at Oscorp, right?
No, they won the middle school science fair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's kind of bullshit, to be honest. I mean, normally, free tickets to your own stuff is something that any sort of public venue like this would give you. I know, like, if you work at a theme park like Six Flags or Disney World, I think just being an employee gives you a season pass to enter. That kind of thing. I think
it's, like, even just, like, you get to go in with your employee, like, badge, and they just don't kick you out when you're done. So, like, if your shift's over, you can go on a ride if you want.
Well, no, I mean, like, on your days off, you can go in and use your badge as your ticket to get in. Ooh. Oh, hi,
Cameo!
Peter.
Look at that!
Oh, this is the day it happened for him, isn't it? This might be the only scene where baby-faced Peter Parker looks appropriate.
I've got the light. Tell me when the sticker's pointed at the sensor, and I'll turn it on.
Oh, we're not...
They don't... The 50 other people in here don't notice these kids fucking with the door.
This is a very stupid thing for these two to be doing, and here's why. Security cameras.
Yeah, no, they're in plain sight.
Need something else.
What exactly are they doing?
Here's an idea. Why not just leave the flashlight on? So yeah, we have to make this little reflective part line up with the light sensitive lock for some reason, and then I don't like this puzzle. You're supposed
to you can rotate it. You can with the right stick. So I think there's actually more than one shape that works. Oh, there you go. You figured it out.
So this is stupid.
This is very stupid.
I get what they're going for. It's kind of a weird place in the game to be going for it, though.
Yeah, I guess they wanted a break before the final confrontation, but it's just kind of like this isn't a Spider-Man game at this point.
They're trying to.
I mean, it's cute.
They're trying to bring home the way these two were previously. So close,
I don't even remember what this is.
It's some sort of light panel.
No, but it's like, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to get the door to open?
We're trying to get the door to open, yes.
Right. Okay. I just fail to remember, like, what exactly does turning the light on this thing
Finn
do?
Tried angling her camera so that the fucking light actually, like, you could probably just angle the phone to get the light to open the door.
I think the idea is that the reflection intensifies the light. So it wouldn't be the same if you just shined your flashlight in the general direction.
I'm gonna miss doing stuff like this with you.
So.
Next.
Although, considering the lengths these two were willing to go through to get through a locked door in a public venue, it really is no surprise that Finn turned out to be Amon.
Okay. This is getting mushy. Come on, let's head upstairs.
Aww. Wait, hold on. This fucking elevator just leads to the...
Mr. Davis. Finn says
And the security lady there just doesn't care to call anyone. She just kind of shakes her head and goes, "Oh, you rapscallions, you."
But the elevator just like led into the middle. We couldn't just press the elevator button?
Well, there's a security
She was guarding
lady.
the door.
There's a security lady outside the front door who would have been checking tickets.
This is it. Our project's in the back.
And she said they can't get it because they don't have a ticket, even though it's their own exhibit.
Think they got a converter all hooked up?
Otherwise, what's the point? They'll need to feed biomass in, though. Maybe we can
Okay, so
The Museum of Natural History.
project.
Here we go, our own exhibit. Yay!
Then we had to get tickets.
That is an ugly ass shirt, Miles.
oh,
How'd you get in without any tickets?
Police. Arrest these two. What the fuck, Rick?
Yeah, it's like, wouldn't Rick have the tickets?
I bought a ticket.
Not important.
Cool, now they're gonna have evidence that we broke in.
You gotta be in it too. You helped us get it working. Okay, fine.
Oh, this is the picture from the beginning of the game. Oh, I'm so smart.
Wheels.
I am not saying that.
Okay.
Oh, that's it.
And then they died. You hate to see it.